Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chung Alfares with the top reports from the world economy. Coming up, the new battleground for public transportation in New York, and the story of one man who has decided to take part in an economic experiment in South Africa. First, the headlines. The Bank of Israel on Monday lowered its key lending rate by 25 basis points to 0.5% to help lift inflation and curb the strong Israeli currency. Small business owners in Israel complained about great losses in revenue as Operation Protective Edge was in its third week. Restaurant owners in particular said they suffered as families and tourists stayed away, with some reporting a decrease of as much as 75%. Places with built-in shelters like malls saw less of a drop in customers. And according to Tel Aviv's mayor, the relative calm has allowed for things to gradually return back to normal. Here's what the mayor's advisor had to say.
I think it would be wrong to overstate that. Obviously, people might feel less pleasant to go out at night. People might want to be more at home, and they follow the news on TV and that type of stuff. But having said that, we're in the heat of the high season of tourism. Things are calm. Everything is going on. Nothing was canceled in the city, and I think that's the message we want to convey to people. If you go to the beach now, you'll see it's packed. If you take a look at what's going on in the coffee shops, they're packed. So we have a very irregular time we're going through right now, and within that realm, I think things are pretty much back to normal.
Airline insurers are reviewing cover for aircraft involved in hostile acts, such as the attack on Malaysia Airlines flight MH17. The industry faces its most expensive year since the 9/11 attacks in 2001, with annual losses set to pass $2 billion. Some underwriters are demanding more than threefold increases in premiums for so-called war insurance policies. Fear of soaring claims for airline war policies comes in the wake of recent fighting at Tripoli Airport in Libya, which damaged almost 24 planes. Plane crashes last week in Mali and Taiwan also contribute to insurers' losses. Fast food giant McDonald's in China's biggest cities eliminated meat items after its main supplier, Shanghai Husi Food, was accused of repackaging old meat as new. The latest scare fuels concerns over the safety of China's food supply, despite years of government investigations and penalties. A Chinese food watchdog said food safety violations at Shanghai Husi, a supplier to global brands, were company-led and not the acts of individuals. US-based OSI Group, which owns Shanghai Husi, said its China operations would now become a part of the OSI international umbrella rather than operating as a separate, decentralized entity. Bain Capital's credit arm, Sankati Advisors, is buying the debt portfolio of JP Morgan's principal investment group for more than $1 billion. The bank's special opportunities portfolio contains junior loans in North America and Europe, as well as securities in Asia and Australia. Shadow banks are increasingly taking over the lucrative parts of big commercial banks under pressure to raise capital and meet new Basel requirements. Sankati, which has $24 billion under management, is likely to hire many of the JP Morgan employees who build the portfolio. Argentines are poised for a default on Wednesday, their third in just over 3 decades. Another default is likely as Argentina is set to miss a $539 million interest payment after mediated talks between the government and a group of holdout creditors made no progress last week. The default is broadly expected to lead to a deepening of the recession, a rise in inflation, capital flight, and a second devaluation of the peso. But the effects are likely to be more contained than in 2001, as Argentine debt is held by a smaller pool of investors. With its famous yellow taxis, New York City is one of the battlegrounds between traditional medallion holders and drivers for peer-to-peer services such as Uber and Lyft. And only the authorities straddle a line between the two. Let's have a look.
It's rush hour in New York and the hardest time to grab a taxi. So instead of hailing a cab, Matt turns to his smartphone and pulls up Uber, a ride-sharing app that connects passengers to drivers in seconds.
He'll pick us up in 5 minutes. It's the easiest way to get a cab in the city. I don't have to worry about hailing a yellow cab. I don't have to worry about calling and being on hold, waiting for a taxi or a limo to arrive. And it comes right to me.
This taxi alternative, where virtually anyone can become a driver, has boomed across the U.S. But to operate in New York, the company had to agree to a special permit.
You have to have a TLC license, which is a special license. It's different than your New York State driver license.
Users like Matt hail the app's convenience, but not everyone is happy. Taxi unions complain it's unfair and unlawful competition. Another ride-sharing app, Lyft, had its New York launch delayed for not complying with regulations.
To give these jobs away to a transient workforce that comes in and out in between jobs when people need to make some extra money, it's such an insult to the hard labor of thousands of drivers.
Despite the growing backlash, Uber is looking to expand. It even slashed some of its prices by 20% to attract customers, making it cheaper than most cities' taxis. But experts say that's not necessarily a good thing.
80% of people in the city, they take public transportation. So if you encourage more people to take cars by making the cars cheaper, you're adding to congestion, you're adding to car crashes, and that is not a good thing for the city.
New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio recently announced further regulations will be put in place to ensure fair practices. It seems Manhattan's iconic yellow cabs won't disappear anytime soon.
In order to feel more connected with his money, one man has decided to take part in a social experiment for National Savings Month in July in South Africa. He's trying to live an entire month using nothing but single rand coins, earning him the name One Rand Man. Here's the story.
It may be small change for many, but a Cape Town man is receiving his salary in 1 rand coins in 3 sacks weighing 150 kilos each. July is National Savings Month in South Africa, and One Rand Man, as he's called in his hometown, is taking it very seriously. He's turned his back on credit and debit cards, cheques and notes, and is paying for everything with 1 rand coins worth about 10 cents.
I'm basically doing it to get reconnected with my money again. Spending just went way out of track and just lost track of all my money.
The experiment takes dedication and organisation. Each cash delivery is counted and divided into Tupperware boxes, and every shopping trip involves carrying a heavy box of coins. His makeshift wallet fits in the equivalent of only around $20, making him reflect long and hard on each purchase.
I've already realised the value of the rand. I'm trying to match up to try and get better prices for what I'm looking for, and impulse buying went out the window completely. You don't buy stuff because you want stuff, you buy stuff because you need stuff.
One Rand Man has removed temptation by blocking his credit and ATM cards and stopping direct debits until the end of the month, when he'll have lighter pockets but perhaps a richer sense of the value of what he's buying.
And Daniel Rudd joins us now for a look at some different articles we thought you could not miss in Media Watch. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
Good, very good, very good. So I understand our first article takes us to something very close to what we're experiencing here in terms of anti-missile defense systems. Right. What exactly is the story?
So these two American senators, Chuck Schumer being the lead one, he's sort of outspoken and a long history in defense subjects. Yes. He's been calling since 2004 for missile defense systems to be put on airplanes so that they can't be shot down, as happened over Ukraine with the Malaysian flight, as people were worried about here with the rocket that landed about a mile from the airport. Right. So it's getting more and more press now, and Senator Schumer is now renewing calls for this missile defense system, which I have to add, I first of all imagined that there would be some Iron Dome batteries on the wings of the plane.
It'd probably be a little heavy, right?
If any viewers at home are imagining this is not what they're talking about. They're talking about a system for getting out of there, essentially, for protecting planes, not necessarily for shooting down missiles.
Presumably, maybe they would use some sort of a light to guide the missile away from the plane. Is
right. Yeah. But the point is that the regulators essentially came away in 2004 saying it's too expensive. Now Schumer is saying it costs $100 million, $200 million for a plane. This system shouldn't cost more than $1 million or $2 million to add in.
Well, it appears that we actually have Schumer talking himself. Let's see what he had to say.
They should examine two things. First, the danger to from the sophisticated anti-SA-11 missiles. But second, also the danger to man pads. It is known that terrorists possess thousands of these man pads or shoulder-held missiles, and we've seen tragedies occur with them before.
Clearly he's talking about threats we've actually seen happen in the past 2 weeks.
Right. So, like I was saying before the clip, if an airplane costs $100 or $200 million to make, and it costs $1 million or $2 million to put in a missile defense system, Schumer's saying essentially, even if it costs a little more, even if the airline tickets go up, the price of airline tickets, which they will certainly, we always pay for the heightened security, whether it's smart or not so smart.
I mean, taking the discussion a little away from that, I mean, for example, if you look at El Al, Israeli Airlines, they have always had really strict security for their passengers. And back in the day, people thought it was ridiculous and over the top. But, since 9/11, everybody in the world thinks it's great, right? I mean, is this the kind of situation that we're going to see here with the missiles as well, with the anti-missile defense system on planes?
I mean, what they're talking about in this case differs a little bit from post 9/11 security because this would theoretically not affect your time in lineup, the taking off of the shoes, the emptying the bottles. These are the types of things we've seen sort of the FAA reacting quickly to someone brought explosive liquids, so no liquids are allowed on a plane anymore.
Right.
In this case, we're talking about something that will cost us all money.
It's less invasive, but it's invasive in your pocket, so to speak.
Right, and El Al used to do heavy security stuff before anyone else was doing heavy security stuff that was invasive to passengers or not, but this one's going to cost a lot of money, and it seems more and more likely that it's going to pass now, given the environment.
Okay, good. What else do we have here?
So we have from Haaretz, they have this piece, an Israeli venture capitalist was poised to have a partnership with an incubator in the U.S.
Okay.
Now, the guy who runs this incubator, Paul Graham, has a Twitter account, as many of us do.
Right.
And tweeted out a few critical tweets about the Operation Protective Edge in Gaza, saying too many civilians have died, things like this.
Okay.
And this Israeli venture capitalist said, okay, it's done. We're not going to do business anymore.
Right.
So he essentially ended what could have been a fruitful partnership in developing countless startups because of a political difference. Now, it begs a serious question about the world of business, about the interconnected world we live in, which is, so what's the line you draw? Where do you mix business with politics?
Right.
And where don't you?
Right. Well, I mean, quite frankly, I mean, like, obviously, at a certain point, everybody draws a line somewhere, right? I mean, like, sanctions that are being put by the government on certain countries, certainly the U.S. government specifically, not the Israeli government, are put there for a reason. For example, in terms of, like, doing business with Sudan at the time that there was allegedly genocide happening, no one would question that line, right?
Right, and I think it brings into the picture also, so on a national level versus a personal level versus a corporate level. But all of them seem to be coming back to the same questions. What is the moral line that you draw? Is it being critical of a military operation? Is it being pro-genocide? In the case of you might expect
Paribas, essentially, I mean, didn't really care when they just, said, oh, you know what, give us your money. We'll just make sure that we can put it in separate, bank accounts elsewhere, and we can still do business, and who cares about the genocide, right? But this is obviously a different situation because we're talking about individuals. Now, it's interestingly, I think I want to note here that if you look at Israel, one of the things that's always struck me is that, a lot of companies in Israel, in the high-tech sector, in finance, in across the board, really, do business with other countries in the Middle East, countries that we don't have friendly relations with. And when you ask about it, it's like, oh well, money's money and business is business. But I guess when it comes to people still sort of put the line somewhere in terms of like, well, I don't want to deal with this. I want to deal with this guy. I don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing. What do you think?
Well, I think in this case it was uncalled for. I think when you look at the reality that Israel is literally still selling electricity and food to Gaza, you're stuck with the reality that here's a guy who cut off business over a comment about a political view versus the two warring parties, Hamas and Israel, that are still doing business together. So to me, it says, okay, this guy didn't really cross a line. He wasn't calling for something that you know, the vast, you know, you're talking about a real debate. You're talking about real gray areas. It's not so cut and dry.
I guess it just hit a personal note with the guy himself, and it's you know, they have to do business together. But Daniel, thanks for joining us on Media Watch. We have to go here. That's The Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial report at I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Chong. Thanks for watching, and join us again tomorrow.